Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome to the August community meeting. It's so great to see some of you or all of you rather, in the chat there. Yeah, really, I'm looking forward to this. I know Isabel and I, we've appeared on screen together before, haven't we? We've done one of these before, but this is going to be a little bit different. I mean, Isabel, she's new to the BIST team, but she's been doing some incredible work over the last year, and really that is what the presentation tonight is all about. So you can see from the title slide here, we're going to be talking about brain injury and violence. But first, why don't we get to know Isabel just a little bit more. So, I mean, Isabel has been working in the field of acquired brain injury since 2014. She has worked in community and support individuals with medical appointments, community referrals, and one-to-one support. Isabel comes to BIST with backgrounds in psychology and journalism, with a certificate in Wellness Recovery Action Planning, or WRAP, facilitation. Her experience working in the community with individuals suffering from ABI has assisted her in creating positive community partnerships and networks to assist individuals living with ABI to help them meet their goals, live healthier lives, and be able to access specialized services within their communities and obtain support. When Isabel is not working, she can usually be found listening to music, attending live shows, or playing the drums. Isabel can also be found looking for any opportunity to hang out with dogs.
And pet dogs.
Yeah.
Also pet dogs.
So everyone, please welcome Isabel. We'll turn it over to her immediately here.
Hi guys, thanks for coming to our webinar. I just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen right now. I'm hoping that you all can. Obviously, as Ryan said, I came to BIST not too long ago in October 2019 and to start this brain injury and violence program. So this evening, I just want to shoot you a little bit of facts about what's been going on, what I've been doing, and how you can connect with me and other services. Okay, so a little bit about my program is that the Violence Impact Program came to BIST as a result of a one-year seed grant from the Ontario Trillium Foundation. And that was given to BIST to support individuals suffering from both brain injuries and who have also been victims of either assault or intimate partner violence. The goal of my program for over the course of the year is to support 30 individuals to access supports with OW, ODSP, tax arrears, and the tax arrears are really important because it assists people once they've caught up with their taxes to get their government benefits like their Trillium checks and their HST checks, because if you don't have your taxes caught up, the government won't send you those. So that's a really great way of quickly stabilizing people financially. Housing and housing related applications support through the diagnostic process to find out if they have a brain injury, what kind of brain injury it was, you know, how long ago they got it, because some people get their brain injuries in childhood and they don't even think about it until adulthood when they realize they have organizational and memory issues. Community referrals, legal and medical, and counseling. At this time, the program is currently successfully supporting 39 individuals, so that's amazing. The Violence Impact Program has also formed partnerships with some pretty interesting individuals in the Toronto community. One of them is the Toronto Community Paramedicine Unit, and I also hold a seat at Focus Toronto on the North Scarborough and the Black Creek Focus tables. So the reason that this type of work is really important is that there's a lot of individuals who are suffering from domestic violence, and each year in Canada, up to 276,000 women are going to experience some form of domestic violence. Up to 90% of the women who seek support and safety in violence against women's shelters will also show signs of a traumatic brain injury. That's really high. That's almost 100% of women, and that's only the amount of women that, you know, go through diagnostics and report symptoms of ABI or TBI and have workers who recognize that and connect them with the proper services. Rates of TBI are much higher, between 35 and 80% among survivors of intimate partner violence than those of the general population. 50% of IPV survivors report multiple blows to the head. 60% have sustained at least one TBI with loss of consciousness, and 75% with moderate severe TBI histories report being strangled. The strangulation statistic is really important to note, just based on the fact that many individuals, unfortunately, do end up succumbing to their injuries after they've been looked at, after they've been checked out, and after identifying strangulation. A lot of individuals who suffer from TBI, from intimate partner violence, have also been shaken. So shaking is a huge issue for individuals. So what exactly have I been up to this year? Well, my community partnership with the Toronto Community Paramedicine Unit and Focus Toronto. These two are really important. The Community Paramedicine Unit is a really amazing resource. If anybody ever has a chance to work with them, it's actually a unit of paramedics who work out of the Black Creek area, and they go to different apartment buildings and they bring individuals some case management, and they also bring them vaccinations and medication and assist with crisis management. So if you happen to be a lucky individual who lives in one of these buildings where they go, you probably are lucky enough to have a paramedic come and visit you once in a while and assist you with some of those things. The other thing that they do that's really important and really great is that they help connect these individuals with community resources like us who can help them in the longer term. So that's really important work. And Focus Toronto is kind of little known, I think, but there are 5 focus tables across the Toronto area. I sit on the ones from Black Creek and North Scarborough, but BIST is included in all 5 tables. So if any individual comes up on the table for any of the areas that they feel BIST could use BIST supports, we can still be called in for those tables as well. So Focus is for individuals who are considered AER, or acute elevated risk. So what that means is that individuals will be presented to the tables in their areas on their consent. So once they've consented to their case being presented in the area, the entire table will sit about and talk about it. And there's a lot of different community agencies sitting on the table. So what happens is if the person is deemed AER, that means that typically they'll get bumped up with services that they need right away, and they can kind of skip over the waiting lists. So if you end up knowing anybody, or you think you know anybody who could be presented at Focus Toronto, you can always give them a call. Toronto Police is really great for bringing cases to the table, the paramedics as well. We also have CAS sitting on the tables. A lot of the violence against women shelters are on the tables. BIST is on the table. Pretty much, Toronto Housing is also on the table. So pretty much anybody you can imagine that you'd want to talk to if you were having a serious issue sits at the table. So it's a really, really great resource. I've also been doing education, which came in the forms of presentations at Toronto Violence Against Women shelters, because 90% of women in shelters do have a brain injury. I felt it was important to go to the shelters and make sure that the staff were educated on what to look for ABI, so that if they had clients who felt the need to have additional ABI services, they could connect with me and they would know who to call. Also, we're doing internal trauma support through RAP groups. As Ryan mentioned earlier, I'm RAP certified, and I also have another certified RAP facilitator who co-facilitates with me. We've currently done 2 6-week sessions for the RAP groups, and there's actually a 3rd coming out soon, hopefully in the next week or 2. We're just deciding on dates right now, so hopefully that'll be available to everybody, and it's free to anyone who wants to join. And we also do them online. I've also been part of a podcast called I Love You. They asked me to do a podcast, the 3rd season of I Love You. It's about brain injury and intimate partner violence, the whole entire season. So I'm on a couple of episodes where they interviewed me and asked me some questions about what I do and where I work. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, and it's actually based in British Columbia, so there's a whole lot of different people from all over the country that were asked to speak on this. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go into your podcast and download I Love You. So during the course of the year, as I've been supporting these 39 people, we've had a couple of awesome things happen. 4 individuals have moved from either having no income or OW to ODSP, which is amazing. 12 individuals have attended the RAP program and created their own RAP to use for everyday crisis and symptom management. 3 individuals have been permanently housed. 4 individuals have been supported with catching up on their back taxes and also obtaining refunds for those back taxes. 4 individuals have been assisted with food security. 5 individuals have been supported with legal issues. 8 individuals have been supported with various applications to housing, ABI networks, transportation, etc. Ongoing support has been provided and is still being provided for all 39 individuals. The referrals that I get are coming from pretty much everywhere. I get them from Focus Toronto, Toronto Police Services, the Community Paramedicine Unit, OWODSP, the Streets to Homes program. I've had self-referrals, and I've also had a couple of peer referrals. So that means that some of the clients that I've been working with have found other people that they felt would benefit from our services, and they've asked them to call me. And these individuals have called me, so I've been able to assist them as well. However, we've had some barriers this year, as you all know. Although BIST does their best to provide barrier-free services, COVID-19 has been a really fun time. Has not been a fun time for me. I'm sure it has not been a fun time for you guys. It's offered some serious issues while we were navigating services since the middle of March. One thing that we've had some serious issue, that I've had serious issues with, is agencies experiencing limited functioning. So a lot of agencies closed their doors when the state of emergency came out, and some of these agencies were people I needed to work with or in conjunction with to get people services or hooked up with more long-term care. They just stopped, they ceased to function for a little bit. Some of them, though, were able to do phone calls, but often what would happen is when you'd call an agency, they'd put you on hold, or they would send you to a different office. They'd like relocated their staff, or they were running on a skeleton crew. So that's been really hard. And face-to-face contact was either limited or completely ceased for quite a while. So typically under regular circumstances, I would have been seeing people every day. I would have been, going to different agencies every day and making different contacts every day. But we've had some struggle the past few months with COVID happening. So that's been a huge barrier. But I would have to say that overall, everything's gone pretty well. We worked around this in some pretty crafty ways. Our wrap groups became offered on a virtual platform, which has actually been amazing for the participants. A couple of the reasons is, well, usually wrap is offered in a room, so it's a group type of setting. So we all get together, we sit together, and we make our wraps together. But often things, upset or bother people, like transportation is hard, the lighting can be difficult, noise and background noise can be difficult, people sitting in uncomfortable chairs can be difficult. So wrap being virtual has actually made it really amazing for the people that are attending, because they can stay in their own rooms, in their own house, they can control the lighting, they can control the noise, they can choose to have their cameras on or off, they can choose how much they participate, they don't feel obligated to, they get all of the paperwork online, so they're able to do all of their wrap online. So I think this is a really amazing program to have offered online, because it seems to be working out really well for people. Members were also offered a telephone and virtual meetings, so anybody who connected to my program, I could meet them on Zoom like we're meeting right now, or I could meet them on the telephone. I could have three-way calls with them and the other agencies. Hopefully we'd get through, but these are things we were able to offer while the lockdown was happening. The advocacy continued over the phone and online. As the reopening started to begin again, the short in-person meetings were started to be allowed. Obviously, we wear PPE. We ask that our clients wear PPE as well. So that's been working a little bit. Mail and courier is still being used to send and receive important documents, and all the BIST programs and groups started to get offered online. So that's kind of how we worked around COVID a little bit. Why is it important to have specialized services for individuals with ABI and IPV? Well, individuals have experienced ABI as well as IPV require specialized supports, because although ABI can often present as mental health, memory issues, focus issues, and medical issues can often find these individuals pulled towards services who don't have ABI education or experience to effectively support them. So I just want to talk a little bit about a couple of individuals I've worked with to explain why this is sort of important. One of them is a legal case study for actual criminal court. So I worked with this individual who was living in a violence against women's shelter, and she was just at the end of her rope. She was super down on her luck. She was homeless, living in a shelter, and she ended up getting arrested for stealing a bottle of liquor from the LCBO. Well, the problem was that this poor woman had already had a history of arrest, and that she was known to police and known to the court system. So when she ended up in court, they were pretty upset with her, and they were kind of ready to just throw in the towel with her and not offer her any kind of mental health support or any kind of community support. They kind of were at the point where they wanted to like teach her a lesson for what she'd done. So she ended up somehow telling them that she worked with me. So I went into court with her and I explained to them that she had a brain injury, and they were upset with her because she frequently forgot appointments. And that's one of the reasons they didn't want to place her with mental health diversion, because she didn't attend her appointments and she forgot about them all the time, and she wasn't attending her court dates, and she would forget about the information they were telling her. So I spoke to her, and what she explained to me was that she was living in a violence against women's shelter, and she was rooming with a woman who was an alcoholic. And this woman stole all of her stuff. So the woman that I was working with, her brilliant idea was to steal a bottle of alcohol because she had no money to trade for her stuff back. And the reason why she always missed her appointments in court, and she was missing her appointments with lawyers and with duty counsel, was because of her ABI. So her judgment was poor, her impulsivity was high, and she was confused, and she was forgetting things, and she wasn't able to focus. So after I was able to speak to duty counsel on her behalf, and they were able to speak to the Crown and also speak to the other parties involved, by the time the police arrested her, they knew who she was already. They were ready to deal with her how they wanted to deal with her. But after speaking with me and for me agreeing to work with mental health diversion to help her along, they actually decided to give her mental health diversion. And so they kind of like dropped the charges as long as I would agree to work with the mental health individuals and help her get the best outcome. So that was really important for her, because if she hadn't had an advocate explaining what her ABI was all about and why she wasn't quote unquote compliant or cooperating and why these behaviors were happening, she probably would have ended up at least serving a little bit of time, because they really had had enough of seeing her in there. So that's a really important reason to have ABI support for criminal court. The other reason that we have here is the victim services. So I've worked with another woman who had to go to court and testify against a previous abuser, an ex-partner, and she was very, 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 of course, frightened about it. This person assaulted her multiple times in many different ways. She was with him for a long time, and she was scared because her whole entire life she had been through the cycle of abuse with different people, family members, different partners. This was something she was used to, but this time she didn't have a choice in the matter because somebody else called the police on her behalf when they saw her being assaulted. So she ended up in court and connecting with the victim services people in court. So part of that process was that she had to go for a day before the actual hearing, and she had to meet with victim services, and she would learn what court was all about, and they would give her a tour of the courtroom and show her where she had to testify and explain to her the steps that were going to happen the day that she came and what would occur and what it would look like to try and make her feel a little bit more at ease. So she invited me to come with her because she didn't feel comfortable going. This woman was basically afraid of everything and anything that had to do with her case. She wanted nothing to do with it. She was terrified, and truly rightfully so. So I went to court with her and we sat, and the woman was very lovely to us and she showed us everything. But, I could see, and I explained to her, I'd been in family court with this same woman before, where she did have to go up against her ex-partner. And as soon as she saw him physically walking into the courthouse, she had a complete panic attack. Couldn't breathe, couldn't stand, couldn't stop crying, falling on the floor. So I knew already from remembering that experience that if she had to go in front of this person, she wasn't going to make it. So I explained to the victim services people on her behalf that she has a brain injury. She doesn't remember a lot of details. She's probably going to forget things when they ask her questions. She's going to feel pressure. She's going to feel afraid. Her anxiety is going to take hold. She's not going to make it when she has to go testify. So I asked if there was a way that she could testify without being near him. So then the victim services woman offered her a camera room, like a closed circuit camera where she could go testify to the judge, see the judge on camera, but she wouldn't have to be in the same room with him. So that was already a step up from having to sit in court in front of him and talk about what happened to her. So that wasn't something she was interested in. The other thing the woman showed us is that I didn't know, and it was a super hot tip for me, is that if somebody is really, really, really afraid of testifying or being in court or have children involved, like if it's family court, custody and access, or you have to have your children involved for whatever reason, a lot of courthouses now offer therapy animal programs, which, as you learned from my bio, I always am looking for reasons and excuses to pet dogs. So if you ask for a therapy dog in court, you might actually get one, and they will come and sit in the waiting room with you where you have to wait before you either testify or go on camera. You can actually sit and hang out with the therapy dog, which I think is really cool and super meaningful, because that is very calming and very relaxing for a lot of people. And I think specifically when children are involved, it could be a really great thing for people. So those are just a couple of reasons why. Also, when I left the court with this woman, And I asked her what her decision was, like if she was going to testify in the courtroom, if she was going to request a therapy animal, if she was going to request the camera room. And she looked at me and said, Isabel, I don't remember anything we just talked. I don't remember anything they just told me. I have no idea what you're asking me. I don't know what to do. And she just kind of started crying, and she was super overwhelmed by the whole situation. So then I was able to sit with her after and explain to her what all of her options were, how she could choose, who to contact, that I could be there. I could be there with her. I could be there in the waiting room while she was testifying. I could go into court with her while she was testifying. So whatever made her feel most at ease, she could have. It's just that the information in the courthouse was coming at her so fast and so much that she didn't have great processing time. She couldn't think about it because she was so scared. So another great thing about our kind of services is that if you are frightened and you have to go through these hard situations, you can have somebody there with you to then explain it to you after you leave in case you missed out a detail, or you don't remember something, or you can't remember what the process is or what the date of the next appearance is. You can have someone there to kind of guide and lead you through that. So I think that that's really a great service to have, and super and really important. So in my travels, I've learned some important resources. And the first one is, if you are experiencing intimate partner violence, or you think you are, and this comes in lots of different forms: physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual, all of that stuff. Your local violence against women shelters are your #1 home base. They can do all kinds of things for you that you don't have to show up there. You can call them and get some telephone counseling. You can explain your situation and what you're going through, and they can guide you into the direction and possible resources in the community that you need. So if you are confused and you are suffering an ABI and you want to get out, but you don't know how, you can call a VAW shelter and they can help you form a safety plan over the phone, and you can explain your story, and they can tell you where they're located, because a lot of them are protected sites, so they don't really have their addresses advertised. And any address that is advertised, I've learned, is a lot of times a mailing address, so the actual location is not the address you would find if you like Googled it. So you actually have to call them and explain what you're trying to do and that you're trying to leave, and they can help you through that whole. And when you get there, they can hook you up with a whole bunch of things. So one of the things that they can hook you up with is like OW, if you have no income, because a lot of abusers keep their victims away from financial things because they want to control everything. It's all about control. So when you get access to a VAW shelter, they can connect you to all kinds of things that can help you: money, housing, other resources like us. So they really are a great place to start. The other one is the victim services. Like I said, in the court, they have great resources as well, especially if you're a victim of human trafficking. If you have recently exited human trafficking, from what I've heard and what I've seen, Victim Services has great right-of-way funding resources that they can get people connected with, things like cell phones, and I think they can put them up in like a hotel room. Like, they can quickly get resources to you right away if you're exiting a human trafficking situation. So they're great. And community legal clinics are also an amazing resource. They can help you through like housing applications. They can help you advocating with landlords, any kind of legal questions that you have. If you require legal representation and you fit into their financial, their financial situation that they help with, like if you're on assistance, you automatically qualify for legal aid assistance and legal assistance from the community legal clinic. So if you need representation, you can call them and they can answer your legal questions for you. So if you want to check us out, you can check us out at www.bist.ca. If you want to hear the I Love You podcast, I actually hate podcasts. I hate them. I can't listen to them. I don't have an attention span for them. However, I did listen to this podcast, not just because I was on it, because I also don't like hearing myself talk. So that was really hard. But I did listen to the whole season, and it is really interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. There's a lot of great information. Like I said, a lot of people were asked to speak on it from different parts of the country, so it's really great. You can find it online if you don't have a phone at iloveyou.ca, or you can get it from the Apple Podcasts at the Apple Store on your phone, or the Google Play Store. And you can also connect with me directly at my cell phone number here, or through email at isabelle@bist.ca. So that's pretty much what I've been doing for the past year. I thank you for learning a little bit more about my program and why it's so important for programs like this to keep getting funded so that individuals who've been affected by violence and ABI can continue to have the supports that cater to them specifically and their individual needs and allow them the best possible long-term outcomes, because that's what we really want. We want people to have great outcomes in the long term so they can be functional and happy members of their society. So I would invite you at this time to ask me any questions. I know I talk really fast, so if there's anything else you want to know, please ask me. So thank you. Thank you for letting me come and talk to you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Isabel. Really, I mean, it really is incredible work you're doing. And I mean, for such an overlooked population, it's like, thank you for just bringing this to our attention and really helping those members of our community that would have otherwise kind of been outside of our service capacity, what we can really help out with. Yeah, it's so cool to see. I mean, so some of the outcomes you shared with us, and gosh, you know, just improving people's situations that way is really an incredible thing. So, I mean, thank you for taking the time to present to us tonight, and yeah, for all the great work you're doing.
I'm tired. I'm really tired. There's a lot to do still. There's a lot. Like 1 year is not nearly long enough to really get in, especially 1 year with COVID-19. COVID-19 really put a fork in that. Like it just, I could have been in so many more people's like faces if it wasn't for COVID, literally COVID-19.
Well, I think that's a really important point too, right? I mean, if we weren't in this situation and you were able to connect the way you otherwise would, I mean, goodness, who knows what these numbers would look like on paper, but I mean, I'm certain you would have helped that many more people, right? So, yeah. So if anyone has any questions, I know Isabel, she shared some resources, right? Some of the things that she's found helpful. If you have any questions about maybe specific resources or questions about the ones she shared, I'm sure she could just say more. So Isabel, do you mind going back to your information slide, that your personal information, that there is a question about
yes,
how to get a hold of you? Yeah. So I do see someone's put up their hand in the chat. Feel free to either use the question and answer or the chat box to ask your question.
Oh, I got, okay. So it says, what's your number? So I just put the slide back up with my number on it. So if you want to copy it off of there, you certainly can. You can also, by the way, that is a cell phone. I feel like when I talk about this topic, I need to make this disclaimer that my cell phone number is a cell phone. So if you're in a situation where you're not safe and you can't talk out loud, you can text me. You can text me if you're hiding. I mean, I've had people text me from hiding in closets. So don't feel like weird or anything. Like whatever story you think is strange telling me, I've probably heard it already a lot of times. So don't be scared to text me or ask me questions, because the chances of me having heard it already are probably pretty good at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And I know you talked about this a little bit when you were mentioning the VAW shelter, how, I mean, that you don't necessarily have to come in right away. If you're in this sort of situation, maybe they can help you just kind of put a safety plan together. Is that something you've helped any of your clients with? Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I do with some of my clients who are in really bad situations, and I know this sounds kind of weird and crazy, but I sometimes will tell my clients who are in really tough spots that to text me like an emoji or like one word or something that's like our special code word, and I will send the police to wherever address they're at, just because I know that that means they're in crisis and they can't tell me what it is. So we put little secret plans like that in place to keep people safe. But I think the hugest thing with my population is to always come at a situation judgment free, because like I've had clients who have left their abusers 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, 25 times, and it doesn't matter how much work we do in between. That is exactly how it's going to go every time. It's like when you quit smoking, you know, people try to quit smoking so many times before they finally quit smoking. So it doesn't matter how many times you try to leave. I'm never going to judge you for going back. Like, we get it. I get it. Like it happens. And eventually there's going to be that one time where you're just ready and you're done with it, and that's going to be it. And that's great. But, you know, my whole goal is to keep you safe regardless of what situation that you're in, and make sure you have resources regardless of what situation you're in. So that's really my ultimate goal.
Yeah, no, I think you may have touched on this briefly right at the beginning, but I know there's another question that I want to get to. But before we do you mind just talking about what the sort of criteria to access you sort of looks like? I mean, what does a referral look like, and how could anyone get a hold of you?
So basically, to access me, you have to either have a brain injury or experience some kind of cognitive issue that affects your entire or impacts your entire life. So you're struggling with those kinds of problems, memory problems, focus problems, any of that, and you just have to call. There's no real wait list to talk to me. You just call me and explain to me what the situation is, and hopefully have a couple of functional goals you want to work on so we can kind of deal with that. If not, usually what happens is I meet a person 2 or 3 times, and by the end I pretty well figured out what role I'm going to play in that scenario. So if you don't know what it is right away, that's okay, because I'll still meet you, because I'm just crazy like that. Like, I'll meet anyone, I don't care.
Yeah, that's great. And really it's so important, because I mean we have a really an incredible question here, because I mean your program, although you deal a lot with, you know, people experiencing intimate partner violence, I mean, this is about violence and brain injury. And so, you know, there's a question here about how do I protect myself from ongoing problems with violent neighbors?
Violent neighbors are tricky because depending on what your living situation is, if you own your home and they own their home and you're kind of committed to owning those specific properties, then you kind of have to deal with it yourself and or call the police. Like, if anyone's ever being violent towards you and you feel comfortable calling the police, always call the police. And violence, like I said, can be a lot of different things. It can be verbal or physical. And I mean, if these neighbors are throwing things at your house or your apartment, that's, you know, not good, and that's vandalism. So police should be notified as often as possible. Start a paper trail. If you live in a complex or an apartment where there's a landlord or property manager, they need to be contacted as often and frequently as possible. And like, if they're trying to shrug it off, and because they do, landlords and property managers don't want to deal with that stuff, there's always a way to put in complaints with the landlord tenant board to hold your landlords accountable and your property managers accountable. So if they're not willing to do anything for you on that level, you can always take it over their heads. However, unfortunately, there's usually a process for that, and you usually have to put a request to them in writing twice with a bottom line before you can go to the board, because the board wants to see that you've tried to deal with that on your own with your landlord or property manager. And then if you've shown that you've tried in good faith to do that and they're not doing it for you, then they'll move forward with the landlord tenant stuff, and the board will make the final decision. And that'll be enforced. Like, that'll be enforced by either the sheriff if they end up kicking other people out or having to relocate you. From what I have learned on the Focus Toronto tables, getting a transfer if you're in Toronto housing is like virtually impossible. So unless your neighbor has literally shown up at your house and put a gun to your head, the chances of you getting transferred because someone is, you know, annoying or threatening or whatever is not that great. So the chances that you're going to have to end up dealing with it yourself are unfortunately pretty good. But I mean, if you ever need help with things like that, with forms like landlord tenant forms and, you know, requests to write letters, because I've done that too. I've typed up letters to landlords and taken it to the client, let the client sign it so it looks like it's from them, and then they hand it to the landlord. So like, we do stuff like that too. So don't hesitate to ask for letters.
That's great. And really, I think you kind of smuggled in a really important piece of advice there. You know, just to kind of create a paper trail early on.
Yep.
Do you mind just saying a bit more about that? What does it look like? What would you include?
Well, it depends on what the situation is. Like, if it's an assault or an abuse situation with a partner, I'm going to say this right now, like, full disclosure, I hate it. And I don't want to say this to anybody because I don't want to discourage anybody. But when you call the police, unless there's an active assault going on, they're probably not going to do much. They're going to ask you to stay away from each other. Like, they're going to say, do you have a place to stay for the night? And if you do, they're going to say, okay, then pack up your stuff and leave for the night. And they're going to separate you. But every single time you call the police, a call log goes into their communications, right? So you're starting a paper trail to show that if and when something escalates and you actually need police assistance, this has already happened. This is especially great when you have kids and you need to separate from somebody. So when you go to custody and access court, if you can find if they find that there's a paper trail of you persistently calling the police and asking for help, you're going to have no problems getting a protective order to protect yourself and your children. You're going to have no problems getting custody, and you're going to have no problems with access. So like, I don't want people to be afraid of family court, because if you have your ducks in a row and you're making those phone calls to protect yourself, you're going to be fine. Like, truly. Get a good advocate and make sure that you have those phone calls in place so that they know, hey, you know what, this person called the police 5 times before we actually showed up during an active assault, or before say maybe a neighbor called the 6th time because they heard the person screaming at you, or they heard, you know, somebody getting hit, or, you know, a threat. Like, sometimes it happens that you've called so many times they're not listening to you, but then somebody else calls because they hear it actively happening. So once you get that in your back pocket, you can always get police reports from the station. You can get all that kind of stuff. So when you do go to court, if you have to go to family court for any reason, or criminal court to go against them for any reason, you have all that proof with you. So it's really, really important to have that if that's the route that you want to go.
Yeah, and really, again, I do think it's such an important piece of advice, because it's probably not what you're thinking at the moment. I'm not hoping to end up in a courtroom. I don't think anyone is thinking that when they're going through some sort of situation. But really, again, I think it's a great piece of advice.
I think what I've learned from people, like, they're really afraid to put their partners in jail or have them, you know, pay consequences for what they've done to them. And when I say that these women have been assaulted, I'm talking about things that are unimaginable, that it's no story that you want to hear, and it happens all the time. Like, it's not he assaulted me once, it's he assaults me a lot. Like, that's the whole thing, right? So, and I think that, and a lot of their motivation, because they're such lovely people that I work with, are, well, I don't want him to do this to anybody else. Because they've gotten to the point, unfortunately, where they feel so broken and they feel so affected by the abuse that they don't care. They've kind of dissociated. They're like, I don't really care what happens to me, but I never want this to happen to somebody else because I remember what this felt like right now. So that's usually the motivation to get these guys got. So if whatever it is, like, keep doing it, because they should be held accountable for what they're doing.
Yeah. So there's another question that's come in, Isabel, and again, I know you had your information up here, but you know, how could someone right now, tonight or tomorrow, get a hold of you and make that first appointment?
Just give me a call or shoot me an email. I will answer right away. I usually meet people. Last Thursday, I will say, admittedly, I worked on the sidewalk downtown Toronto because I met with a homeless client. So basically, wherever you are, I will meet you. I will sit on the sidewalk with you on Yonge Street and do work. So wherever you want to meet me, I'll show up there.
Okay.
I promise.
Yeah, this is important too. I know we're sort of at the stage now where we've moved into a phase 3 or a stage 3, and so it sounds like you're kind of back out in the community. And
yep.
Yeah.
Thankfully, because I'm tired of being at home, you guys. Just call me.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Okay. So I don't see any more questions in here, but I'm going to kind of leave the questions and answers open a little bit longer here, because we want to kind of make the best use of Isabel's time here. She's such a wealth of knowledge, and yeah, we have the time to kind of pick her brain.
That is true. I think a lot of people that I talk to anyways, or that I work with, are like very afraid of the court process, regardless of what it is. Like, if it's their own criminal court, like I explained before, for whatever reason, obviously everyone's afraid of criminal court. Nobody wants to be arrested for things, and nobody wants to be in that situation. I think family court's a lot, personally, I think family court's a lot scarier, because a lot of times it has to do with children and where they're going to go and who they're going to live with and what that's going to look like, and that's really terrifying. So yeah. People they don't want to talk about that, but it's important.
I'm going to kind of shift us in a different direction here. Again, I know the presentation, and I mean, your work is about brain injury and violence, and I know that a sort of vast majority of your caseload is made up of, you know, people experiencing intimate partner violence. But, you know, what other sort of situations are you finding people in? What else have you helped with?
I've worked with individuals who have been assaulted, like not from an intimate partner. One of my clients was a victim of a carjacking and ended up having a piece of his skull removed. So that's a huge brain injury. The other one that I met Thursday was homeless and was actually assaulted by somebody while he was just sleeping outside. He ended up with severe ABI, like ended up in a coma, tons and tons of rehab, and the beating was bad, like it was very bad. So like anybody, basically, it doesn't have to be an intimate partner attack, it can be an assault from pretty much, well, anywhere. Like, so if people have been violently assaulted and they have a brain injury as a result of it, they can also work with me. And I've been seeing that. I've been seeing people who have been assaulted by other, just unknowns. Some people are just randomly unknown who have been calling me for help. So
yeah, and of course, I mean, you kind of said it in your explanation, but you're not just helping women, you're helping men, you're helping whoever, again, is identifying with those like very basic criteria. I mean, the same ones we sort of have with all of this programming. I mean, just identify someone with a brain injury or a cognitive impairment and looking for some support here. So, yeah. So someone's asked in the chat, what does I lobe mean?
I lobe you. I think I think the I lobe you, I think they named it because of the frontal lobes, but it's supposed to be like I love you, but it's I lobe you.
Yeah, it's a bit of a play on words. I think they're trying to be clever. Yeah.
That's the name of the podcast. I think they called it I lobe you so that there's more focus on the actual brain. Because I think all seasons have to do with something ABI related or like brain research related. So this third season just happens to be all about brain injury and intimate partner violence. And actually, a lot of the season is made up of survivor stories as much as it is of professionals who work in the field. So I mean, it's a wealth of knowledge for even professionals. For me, like when I listened to it and I heard the survivor stories and I heard the kind of experiences that they're going through dealing with these situations, it was pretty eye-opening just because we think we have the best way of approaching people or, you know, best way of thinking. When you actually hear somebody who's been through it, you can sometimes just go, oh man, I did that all the way wrong. Like the next time I meet somebody in those circumstances, I'm definitely not doing that again. So I think that I learn from the people I work with as much as they learn from me. Like it's definitely not me doing all the work. It's like us walking through this together. Like we're figuring this out together and hopefully we get great outcomes together because I hope for the best, but I can't do everything. I need you guys.
Yeah.
I need help.
Well, I wanted to comment on this and thank you for asking the question, but I think fair enough. Isabel, not a big fan of podcasts, but
No.
I think she's being modest. She really does an incredible job in the different episodes that she's being interviewed. And yeah, again, hearing from these other professionals, and survivors. Thank you for pointing that out too. It's really some incredible stories in there. So yeah, lots of little nuggets to pull out of each episode.
And it's crazy because one thing I don't think of a lot, because it's not typically the population that I work with, but some of the women on the podcast that were survivors are making like they're high-end business women and their exes were high-end businessmen, and there was a lot of money involved in that whole, you know, transaction of them breaking up and her trying to get custody of the kids. And basically there was enough money in his pocket to pay people off, like pay off lawyers and, you know, pay for this and pay for that and make her look quote unquote crazy because of her ABI and because she forgets things and try to make her look unfit. So the little intricacies that I never even thought of when working with people, like these things really happen and it's actually terrifying. So it just solidified my thoughts that having people do this kind of work and having advocates show up in court with people or just walk through life with people is so important. Like it just should never stop. Like it should just be a thing that happens, and wait lists should be a thing that don't happen. So like if you need a person, you should have a person. That's just how it should be.
Yeah. Okay, just again taking a look at the time here, we do have Isabel for a little bit longer, so probably give it 2 more minutes for anyone who kind of wants to just pick Isabel's brain, ask her absolutely anything. I know she's happy to share.
Yeah, my brain requires prompting, so if you ask me questions, I'll answer them. Oh, I see a hand up. I don't know how to fix it though. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yes, Helen, do you have a question?
I did. She asked.
Oh, she asked it?
She did ask, yeah.
Good.
Okay, it's looking pretty quiet, but again, want to thank you, Isabel. I know you're taking time out of the end of your day here. I mean, you obviously work today, and all the great work you were just telling us about. So, I mean, thanks for taking just a little bit longer to kind of catch us up on some of the amazing stuff you've been up to. So, like, yeah, thank you. And for anyone still tuning in here, please take a look at the slide in front of you. This is all the information you need to get a hold of Isabel. The presentation is being recorded, so you'll find this on YouTube probably within the next day or two. But if you need answers, if you need her knowledge, but please just feel free, reach right out.
Also, if you're interested in joining a RAP group, just keep an eye on the BIST website, because there's going to be another session coming out in the next week or two. So if that is something that you feel might be helpful to you, then I invite you to come, because so far we have had people who really, really love it and keep coming back. So I'm happy for that. I'm excited for that. And RAP is really great. It's a really great program for people.
So the question that just came in, it sounds like you're wondering when we're going to get into a group again together in a room, preferably.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, that's kind of like the $1 million question popping up every day now. And really, I'm sorry to say that I don't have an answer. It's, although Toronto's sort of moved into a stage 3 and things appear a little bit safer, we are still a vulnerable population. I mean, our members, aside from their brain injuries, have other vulnerabilities, other health conditions, and we don't want to put anyone at some sort of unnecessary risk of getting sick. So we are thinking about this every day, and goodness, it is hard to kind of sit around and do this through the computer, because yeah, I would love to. I've done this at either the office or 9 bars, and I've seen all of you in person again, and yeah, just to hang out again would be really, really nice.
And it's
so
like
I know I've kind of skirted around your question, but the answer for right now is that we don't have an immediate plan to bring people back into the office.
Well, and also, like, to piggyback off that, for my specific program, this actually really sucks, because when people tell you their horrible stories, and like, maybe I'm the first person they talk to since they left an abusive relationship, and they're talking about it, and I can't even hug them. So like, it's really awful. I feel everybody who's sad and missing human beings right now, and missing hugging human beings right now, because we all kind of need each other, right? I know. If you come to my house, I will try to figure out how to not let you leave. That's where I'm at right now. That's where I'm at. I also want to say that I saw Mike's comment in the chat that says the only court I've been to is the food court, and I think that that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's good news.
That's a good court.
Okay, well, it looks like the questions and answers are cleared, Isabel. Again, thank you. For everyone here, again, check out the website or our YouTube channel in the next day or two, and you will see this recording up there.
Definitely.
Thank you all for tuning in and listening to Isabel. And lastly, of course, Isabel, I'll give you the last word here, but thank you again for taking the time.
Yes, no, thank you. Like, honestly, like I said too, if I had to recommend one thing, definitely listen to the podcast if this is a subject you're interested in, because there's a lot of really great information on there. And if you want to connect with me after, you all have my phone number and my email now. So I'll be more than happy to take your phone calls and emails and help in any way that I possibly can. Thanks for giving me part of your evening, guys.
Okay, very cool. Thank you, everyone. Well, we will see you for the next community meeting at the end of next month. Of course, it's our AGM, so come prepared with your questions, and look forward to kind of seeing you all again. Yeah. All right. Enjoy your evening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.